Graduated, elevated, now it's my time to shine, yeah, let's go. Graduated, elevated, now it's my time to shine, yeah, let's go. Major moves, power moves.
You know, there are these forces, there are always going to be these greater expectations and ideals. But we have two choices. Like, we can either sit there and complain about how problematic everything is forever and be miserable, or we can start to acknowledge that those pressures are never going to resolve overnight. They're not, right? Tomorrow morning, they're still going to be there. They're not going to resolve overnight. And in the meantime, what one step can we take in the microcosm of our lives to let things feel easier, to feel better, to feel more joy and confidence, whatever that might mean to us. So this is applicable in terms of beauty ideals, I think, as well, you know, whether that is not wearing any makeup and saying sod it and enjoying your health and comfort, or wanting to put on a full face of makeup and doing the whole thing, you know, putting on your Sunday best and going out. And that trickles down and translates now into how I approach my PhD coaching. See, there is a connection. I
saw that.
So yeah, I think, you know, I went into coaching because I feel that there is a lot of negativity and sort of misery and struggle in the PhD journey. And there's these kind of unspoken beliefs around, like, oh, big bad academia and the horrible academics putting all this pressure on me, and this is horror, and there are so many prejudices, and certain groups of people have more privilege than me, and therefore I'm always downtrodden in my PhD, and it's bound to be just an awful 4 years of misery. And it's acknowledging that and saying, yes, you know what, like, there are many things wrong with academia right now. There are many things within that structure that do need addressing and overhauling. But again, realistically, those structures are not going to change overnight. And in the meantime, still got to get shit done, right? Still got to get the PhD out, still got to do that research that we like wholeheartedly believe in. And also, like, through all of that, we still got to try and stay relatively healthy and sane, right? So what is one thing that you can do or drop, or what one piece of advice or support can you reach out for within your network that can help to make that journey a little easier, a little clearer, and a little more joyful in spite of these continuing pressures? So that's what I try to do with my PhD clients, and with, you know, when I put content out on Twitter or on social media, it's just to remind people, you know, that despite all the competitiveness and the pressures and the seriousness, the huge, heavy seriousness of academia, like, how can we make tiny micro decisions in our everyday PhD life that will make that journey fulfilling and enriching and healthy for us, so that we can do that good research.
I love what you do, because I don't know if you've seen on Twitter, but there are a number of our colleagues who feel like they don't get the support from their supervisors. And there is also a good number of our colleagues as well who've literally taken a sabbatical break because they are at breaking point. And then you've got a number as well in terms of women in STEM, where they feel like, oh, I can't get pregnant because I'm going to lose out, or I'm pregnant, they're not allowing me in the labs and I'm losing out. I can work in a lab, you know, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm just pregnant, literally. So in terms of these different groups with what you do, I think it's very empowering, looking at your research in terms of beauty ideals as well, even though you don't agree. I mean, that's what we do in research. You don't have to agree.
Yeah.
But
absolutely. That's so key, that you don't have to necessarily agree. Yeah.
Yeah. but you're empowering, you know, the women in terms of their beauty and their ideals. Going into these groups that I've just mentioned, do you work with these groups? Also, neurodiversity. Do you work with everybody in all the groups that I've mentioned? Is that the sort of work that you do?
Yeah, so I mean, I will say that I'm not a mental health professional. So I'm, you know, I think if someone is, for example, diagnosed with ADHD or autism, I would always recommend that they work alongside a therapist who is better equipped to support them in those ways. But I support on a broader basis, to help you find, or to help PhD folk find their best way of doing research. And it's two-pronged really what I do. So first of all, firstly, it's a little bit contentious, right? Like, I try to get people to really, really connect with their deep down desires and values for their life. Like really, really digging all the way down, not just like, I want to be educated, I want to have a PhD, I want to have a good job at the end of the PhD, but really going all the way down to those non-negotiable values that we really desire in our lives. Like, so that could be, you know, I want to live a life of ease, or I want to live a life that is joyful. I want to live a life that is challenging and stimulating, right?
Yeah.
And then, like, once we get in touch with those core desires and values, to then see how we can curate our PhD lives to align with those values. And why I say it's contentious is sometimes when we dig down into those values, we may realize, like, actually a PhD and academic life doesn't align with those values, maybe, you know. And I know of people who have come up against, and these are not my clients, these are friends of mine who were perhaps, you know, one of I'm thinking of a particular friend of mine who's a writer, a yoga teacher, just all around kind of awesome human being, who was doing a PhD in North America, and just one day was like, it's not for me anymore. It's not aligning with what I want out of life, and I'm going to quit. And to help people see that if you do make a decision like that, that's not failure, that's not quitting, and all those kind of negative terms that we use around that. That is you living your core desires and allowing those core desires to kind of expand and flourish, and to give yourself permission to do that. So yeah, it's contentious because I could potentially be like encouraging people to drop the PhD. But I fully believe that, you know, if you are doing a PhD and you're not aligned with it, it's going to be so much harder. It's not going to bring you the fulfillment, and you're possibly not going to really do good work, or work that you will feel proud of anyway. And that, you know, if you decided to drop it and to change tack and to go somewhere else, you know, you might be able to do work that is doubly impactful, that may, you know, you may end up generating research in another field, or in another sector, or in another way that is even more enriching. So that's the first piece that I work towards. And so that's, you know, helping people to get real deep down in with what their values are and what they want out of this PhD. And then secondly, it's on a, you know, looking at it on a day-to-day basis. How can you shape and I like to use the word curate all the surrounding elements of your life to help you design that PhD life in a very purposeful way that is going to feel lit up for you, that's going to like really align with how you work, and to, instead of, and this is where, you know, it doesn't really matter who I'm working with, whether it's someone who's neurodiverse or someone who's working part-time, or a woman who is pregnant. You know, instead of feeling shame for those things, and I think academia sometimes can tend to make us feel that way. So instead of feeling like shameful or like not good enough, or like, oh, I need to fix something about me in order to be a quote unquote successful, good researcher, how can we instead really embrace those weird, kooky parts of us, you know, embrace the neurodiversity, acknowledge like, okay, I have an ADHD brain, and therefore it means that I work better under these kinds of conditions instead. This is the way I operate best. And giving ourselves that permission to work in those ways that feel best for us. So I always say that, like, in order for us to do really good research, we need to make sure that the researcher is looked after and taken care of first. And that starts with owning our deep down desires and values, owning all those parts of us that feel messy. And that's why I call myself the messy coach. And instead of letting it be messy, like celebrating those parts of us, and instead of seeing it as something as a detriment to our research, to see it as something that can really actually enrich our research. Like, that's what can add to what you're generating and producing.
I love that, but I've got a question. Are you
Yes.
global? Can anybody like contact you in terms of assistance in your services?
Yes, so I do have clients from all over the world. So definitely anybody who wants to work with me can come work with me. I do coaching one-to-one. So you would get me fully. I would work directly with a client and to meet their individual needs and what's going on in the context of their own in the context of their own research. I do also run a group coaching program which runs for 3 months. It's called the Messy Ph.D. Group Coaching Hive, and it's a little hive of activities, little bees buzzing around in support of each other. I very much believe in the power and loveliness of community. You know, the PhD can be a bit of a lonely experience, and it's just really nice to be in a little hub, a little hive with other people who are also on a similar journey. So the current intake is just rounding up. It will end in mid-April. Okay. So I'm hoping to run another round later this year. So yeah, the one-to-one, the group coaching, and I do also offer like open webinars to the world. So those are just like one-off little online workshops or webinars that anybody from anywhere can come and join.
Excellent. So it links into the next thing, which is the webinar that you have on the 27th of April. Hope I got that right. So
That's right.
Could you share with the audience in regards to what that is, how they can get the tickets if they want to get some tickets, and just take it from there?
Okay, so the next webinar that I'm doing is the 27th of April, and we are in 2023, just for any folks who may be tuning in later than that. It's at 4 p.m. British summertime, and it's called, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this, but it's called, okay, it's called Get Shit Done. And it's a webinar around alternative practices for meeting and addressing procrastination, demotivation, and overwhelm in the PhD. And I'll be offering lots of tips and little practices and routines that you can take on into your PhD life to help you work with a lot more ease, to help to alleviate some of those like messy, uncomfortable feelings around work. And also at the same time to actually make progress that you can feel good about. So it's $25 to join, and there's, I'm guessing you'll put a link somewhere below this video. There's a link in my link tree that you can go directly to book your place. I do also want to say that because these webinars are offered globally, I understand that Some students may have some financial constraints, and the exchange rates and all that kind of thing may mean that this is more expensive and not affordable for some people. Please don't let that be a hindrance. Like, if you really want to come along and finances are difficult, just pop me an email and we will work something out for you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So if you are interested, all the details will be at the bottom of the video, and they'll be shared on all the socials in terms of PhD Hard Talk. However, in terms of the webinar as well, there might be another one next year. So all the details will be on Jamie's Linktree, isn't it? Linktree. Yeah. So if you are interested, please do get in contact. Jamie, before you go, got 3 more questions. So the first question is, do you think, in your opinion, a PhD or a master's or a BA, BSc, whatever it is, postgraduate anyway, it breaks the poverty cycle? What are your thoughts?
Ooh. I don't know if it that on its own breaks the poverty cycle. I think it's more important to go back a bit before that, before we even get to postgraduate level.
Take me there. Let's go back.
Yeah. So I think it's about making education and those opportunities to even pursue higher education accessible to vastly greater numbers of communities in the world who maybe don't have that access right now. So I think if we want to break the poverty cycle, we need to make that education accessible as early on as possible for people to then eventually get to a higher education level, and then perhaps to pursue a postgraduate degree.
That's interesting. But then now I've got a question.
Okay.
And it's just popped in my head. So do you then think then we should have a standardized language globally for everybody, if we're saying education should start, at the right time, in terms of whether you're in year 1 or year 2, the grading system? Because I'm thinking, you've got some people, for example, in Brazil, they speak Portuguese, and then when they move, due to them having the certificate to say you've got a master's or a PhD, they have to then learn English or learn German, because in Germany, they don't really like English like that, or go to France, they're to learn French.
Yeah.
So, I'm just thinking, in terms of migration, we're still limited, but we may have the certificate. So what are your thoughts on that?
I do also think, it's education and higher education, postgraduate qualification, it is very Eurocentric, right? Like, even in the way we do the research, I was in a center for women's studies, and I knew that alumni from my center, they were called out in their viva for not using enough Western theory, even though their research and their data was not based in Europe or in the white global northwestern world. So I think that needs to be changed first. I think we need to stop only giving credence and props to education that comes from the global north and from white Western systems. If we were given acknowledgement and recognition to qualifications and education from systems all around the world, that would even things out perhaps a little bit more, and then not need for people to have to go and learn a whole new language in order to be recognized. For example, I have a very dear PhD friend of mine who was originally from Nigeria, and she's migrated and now lives in the UK. And her research was around the experiences of diasporic Nigerian women who'd moved into the UK. These are all women, she said, who were highly qualified, highly educated back in Nigeria and Lagos. But when they got here, they were now relegated to doing very menial work, simply because their education and their certificates weren't recognized. They were fluent in English, right? Like these women are very capable. Their education was probably in English, but because it, their certificates came from Nigeria or a Nigerian institution, not recognized. So I think those kinds of inequalities are also something we really, really need to address.
That's interesting, which links into the next question without you knowing, which is equality, diversity, and women in the workplace. We've seen all of these movements. I'll start with BAME, and then we've got the LGBTQ plus, get that wrong sometimes, but you've also got the change from BAME because apparently it's not right. So now we're trying to come up with a new framework of thinking, but then you've got equity as well. And then you've got men's movements who feel like they're not heard in certain industries. What are your thoughts in terms of what we're doing at this moment in time?
Oh gosh, that's a hugely loaded question. Okay, so first of all, I think it is great that we're always trying to improve, that we're trying to find the right words, the right support. I think that is good, that all that kind of social progress is always going to be good, right? If we're seeking to give greater voice to greater greater proportions of the community who were previously unheard, that can never be a bad thing. That's always going to be a good thing. However, this is going to be a little controversial. I also, while I think it's always good for us to elevate voices that are not always heard, and to give people equal space and respect, of course, and platforms to speak. Something that I came across a lot is again people getting stuck in continued negativity. And what I mean by that is people who get stuck in things being racist. So for example, that's an example, right? So I'm saying,
no, I'm with you.
Yeah, so people who will say, well, I'm never going to get anywhere because the odds are stacked against me because I am not a rich middle class white man, and therefore it's I'm defeated even before I've tried. Or if somebody says an unpleasant comment to you, or for example, if you're not given a promotion, where people automatically go and say it's because I'm not a white middle class man. I do disagree with that. I'm not saying that there aren't biases and prejudices. I'm not saying that a middle class white man doesn't have privileges, but I think it's a disservice to ourselves to always and already place, when I say us, I'm talking about people of color, women, anyone who's in a minority or who has fewer privileges. I think it's a disservice to ourselves to always already let those identifiers be a restriction to us. And I don't think it helps the conversation. I think it in fact sometimes closes off the conversation. People, if we're always accusing people of being racist to us, of being sexist to us, it doesn't help the conversation. I think these things need to be addressed, but I think the ways in which we bring this up can be adjusted in a way that is gonna, I think sometimes we are so angry, and we are, and rightly so, we are angry that we're not heard. But sometimes the way we express that anger shuts down conversations rather than opens them up. That's basically what I'm saying. I think it.
I agree with you. Sorry to interject. And I think it links into the work that you do in terms of a PhD to say, let's get to the core value of who you are. Then let's work through the milestones and then get to a point whereby you've cried, you've smiled, and then now you're realistic, in terms of your reality. And then let's pick up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, your psychology contract.
Yes.
Then proactive personality, here I come, and let's start marching. So, sorry to be very scientific there, but
no, I get it. Absolutely. It's very much like, I love what you said about like now it's time to take action after we've done all of that. Like, okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to sit here forever? And I do know people who do that, sit forever, complaining about how everyone favors white middle class men, and like, poor me, I'm not a white middle class man, so of course it's going to be harder for me. Like, are you going to do that forever? Or, what one thing can you do in your life? What one person do you have who is an ally, who believes in you, who is fighting your corner? Why do we direct our attention only towards all the things that are not working, rather than directing some of that attention to what could work, to other possibility, tapping again into those like core desires, and what one step can we take to get ourselves closer to that? And I know that sounds really idealistic, but it's also realistic, right? It's also like, there's always going to be inequality. Those inequalities are not going to change overnight, but we still got to find purpose and joy and peace in our everyday lives. And what one thing can we do to get ourselves there? And being angry and talking about all the things that are problematic all the time, probably not going to get us there.
I doubt it. And I think it which links into self-undermining, because you start to undermine yourself a lot, and then you will never be confident. So then you're back to square one, just hating. But these are opinions. Are just they're our opinions. Please don't come for us. In terms of the last question, you'll be glad to hear. It is basically.
I'm totally enjoying this, by the way. You have me all the questions. I could sit here all day.
Part 2 is coming, then we're having a part 2. Love it. So, in terms of PhD hard talk, then, do you think it's a good platform for us, and also, for the universities as well, the fact that we've got, a platform where we can chat? Or do you think, Noma, actually, it's not working, call it a day and shut it down? What are your thoughts?
Oh, you know what? I love that you have created this platform for people to talk about their research and what they do. Oh, yes. And if I may just share, like, one of the workshops that I do, I get people to go away into groups to talk about why they believe their research can change the world, or how is your research valuable? And I get people to get back in touch with why they're doing what they're doing, what they're finding, what they love about their research. And in every time I've done that, people completely light up, like you see them light up. And I don't think we do this enough. I don't think there are enough platforms where people can just come and just talk about their research. And that is such it's such a juicy, like, inspiring, motivating aspect of doing a PhD. Like, when you're mired in the everyday mundaneness of data collection and writing and analysis, and oh my gosh, I've got to do this lit review, we can't see the forest for the trees. We forget, like, what it is that brought us here, why we believe what we do, what we're fighting for, what we're arguing for, the contribution that we're making to this field. Like, we forget all of that. And I think this is what your platform enables us to do. It provides that opportunity for us to get back in touch with why we do what we do. I mean, I haven't talked about my research, like, since I graduated, way back 2-3 years ago, or since I submitted the thesis, really. And it was fun to get back into it and be like, oh, actually, I did do some, like, interesting stuff.
And I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah. So thank you on behalf of all PhD students. And it's always really nice to hear, like, what other people are doing as well.
Yeah, and thank you very much for your time, and literally for coming on and sharing your time. So before we go, don't forget, if you're watching this year, to make sure that you sign up for the webinar on the 27th of April. And then if you're watching next year, just go on the link tree and see what's available. But the one-to-one coaching is always there, and the group coaching as well is always there. Before I go, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And remember, project dissemination to the world and sustainable knowledge to the world. So thank you very much. I am your host, Noma Mguni, and this is Ph.D. Hard Talk. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed this hour with you.